if you just call a random GC and say, hey, I want you to come to a meeting once every other week, and I want you to provide your input, and I want you to do all these things, and then maybe we'll get a job in the end. There'd be a lot of them who'd be like, no, we're not doing that. But that's kind of going back to the relationship we have of, making sure that, I have your best interest in mind and you in mind as well. There's a lot of trust that goes into that of, hey, I'm hoping you don't, come at the end and screw me and then.
That's what Braden and I are doing.
Yeah,
too.
I know. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate. My name is Braden with our co-hosts Brian and Joel, and today we have a special guest, Tyler Detring with Ascend Construction. He's been working on a project with us now for a year or two. Super excited about that. We'll release it soon. But anyway, Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself and Ascend.
Hey, guys. Yeah, so my name's Tyler Detring. I own Ascend Construction. We focus on small to medium size ground up and renovations, and yeah, I'm just super happy to be here. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely,
thanks for being here.
So I think on today's episode, we're going to focus on development. You've got a piece of land. A lot of people love the idea of development. We're going to build something cool. We're going to build something fancy, whether that's multifamily housing, whether that's a renovation or some sort. A lot of people are into that. And, when do you get a contractor involved? What's the first step? How do you kind of kick it off?
You've got your piece of land. Let's assume you've got a piece of land. You've got an idea, but that's as far as you've gotten. When do you think a GC ought to be involved?
So it's I think it's really important to get a GC involved early on, and there's a lot of reasons for that. A GC can kind of help you kind of keep costs under control. I mean, architects are super important as well, but we can kind of talk about that as well. But architects a lot of times can inflate that cost in the design.
So are you thinking you get you sign up the GC before the architect, or the architect you sign him up and get some drawings and then get the GC involved, or what's your opinion on that?
It can go different ways. But if you have a good relationship with a GC who you trust, it's great to get them involved really close up front. But a lot of times it's good to have them both at the same time. And the reason is an architect their job is to draw the most beautiful building, and they're really, really good at that.
Yeah, they are.
But a lot of times they're not great at thinking practically about what makes sense for the client that we're working with.
Right.
Or what are the costs for certain materials in the industry at the time?
For sure.
We've had some luck with GCs. We're working on our first development, and the GCs, they bring cost-saving ideas to the architect, and it's kind of a blend to try to get something that looks really cool, but also is practical to build.
Yeah, for sure. It's super important, and we've dealt with that several times already. It's just they have these ideas of what works best, and we would love to do what works best, but sometimes we don't have to build the Taj Mahal on this one. Maybe later we'll have that in our budget, but right here on this project, that budget does not allow those really, really high-end finishes. So it's just good to always have that in mind. And most of the time, a GC is going to be thinking practically because, they want the project to be done. An architect, they get paid up front. So if the project doesn't happen, it's really, they're still going to get paid. But general contractor, most of the time, doesn't get paid a dime until, you get boots on the ground. So they're very interested in making sure that the project happens.
Right, because you could spend a lot of time on a project that never happens, right?
Oh, for sure. I've done it tons of times. We've spent hundreds of hours on projects, and, then it just falls apart. It's, it dies at design, which is the worst nightmare for everybody.
So what you're saying is you're trying to help make sure that project happens, right, by keeping costs under control.
No doubt.
On Braden and I, we came up with a budget of this office building we wanted to do, and we knew what it had to be to work. When can you come up with your budgeted cost and see if what we budgeted can actually work? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
When does that happen?
That's a good question. So you can make a budget at any time. I can make a budget off of a sketch on a piece of paper, but the more information that's provided, the more accurate our budget can be, if that makes sense. So,
in that regard, it makes me think that an architect needs to be involved.
Absolutely. You can give budget numbers, but it can only be accurate if you have, civil engineers, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, and an architect working on those designs.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges that we faced in our first development that we're going through right now is all of what you're saying is true. But if you don't have the design done and the civil done, then you really can't get an accurate cost. Well, then how do I really evaluate which GC is going to be most cost effective? Because they all have different overhead structures and employee costs and all of that. But I need that person to help me with the design, with the architect and civil to make cost effective. But then I haven't picked one yet. Yeah. So I don't know if that's something that you run into some.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. One thing you can do is interview GCs, get 3 or 4 GCs that do the type of project that you're trying to build. And you can talk about fees. What's your overhead rate going to be? If you guys establish an overhead rate, let's say it's 5 to 7%, whatever it is, you say, okay, our overhead's going to be 7%. And then from there, you're just bidding out the project to the subcontractors, and whatever the subcontractor's cost is, the markup for the GC is at 7%.
So cost plus
kind of, I mean, yeah, it's more of a kind of a design build construction manager format. I'm not in favor of cost plus for a couple of reasons, but yeah, I think that's a great way to do it, is to interview, see who you feel good about, get references from them, see if they've been successful in the sector, in the market that you're building, and then, establish and negotiate what that markup's going to be. Yeah.
Do any of the GCs employ architects where it's just one company?
There's some. There's not a ton that do that.
Okay.
But yeah, there are a couple.
Okay.
It probably have to be on the larger side, maybe.
I would think that might be a pretty big
have enough project
company.
flow to keep architects full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a relationship interviewing process with not only the general contractor like yourself, but the architect. Everyone's time is expensive. Everyone has a specialty, and like you said, you can create a budget at any time, and you're gonna send people fancy drawings that look great. Probably won't be the final materials. Probably won't be the final building at all. And everyone's gonna bid it super high, super low. They're gonna bid it a different way. They're gonna bid it with different formats. The architect, kind of the same thing. It can be a process, or it can be super short. So if you know exactly, we've done our Kitty Academy developments. We know exactly what we're doing when we acquire the piece of land. The building's completely drawn. We know our partners know exactly how much it should cost. So we're doing a fixed cost bid. It's not cost plus. We say, hey, this building costs $4.5 million to build. Have fun. And if there's a massive wood spike or a steel spike or something like that, they're covering it. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Yeah.
What's your preferred structure with an owner as far as a GC type contract?
Yeah, I love the design build and project management, project manager style, where we establish a negotiated overhead cost, and then at the end, once you do get a set of plans, then the competitive part comes from the subcontractors competing with each other, and they're going to drive the cost down, and that overhead rate stays the same, and you know what that cost is going to be, and then in the end, you know you're still going to get good value because the subcontractors are competing against themselves and driving down that cost. Because in a design bid build, which is when you just work with an architect and then you send it out to bid for general contractors, they're sending it out to their subs, and the GCs are competing with each other. There's some things you'd have to look out for in that arena when you're doing.
Obviously, there's more risk for the GC in that scenario, right?
There is. I mean, there's risk for everybody. There's people who love that style, and there's people who don't. We operate under that as well a lot, but definitely preferred is to be working from the beginning and establish that relationship. We really want to have a great relationship with who we're working with.
So when do you start charging, if you do that scenario where you're charging an overhead for the size of the project?
Yeah. In our experience and what we have done is it's not until we get boots on the ground and we've started actual construction. Unless it's a true design build and we've brought the architect to the table, then, we are a subcontractor, or the architect's actually a subcontractor for us, and so they would be billing us and we'd be paying them. But
gotcha.
yeah. But as far as if, an architect and a GC is brought to the table at the same time, then, you know, a GC is not getting paid until actual construction starts. So, you know, that could be a big risk for a GC. And
I think it's advantageous though for the owner in that scenario
for sure
to get the advice and the consultation of a GC through that process and not be on the hook to pay until you actually get going.
And you know, and that's going to be hard to find, to be honest, because if you just call a random GC and say, "Hey, I want you to come to a meeting once every other week, and I want you to provide your input, and I want you to do all these things, and then maybe we'll get a job in the end," you know, there'd be a lot of them who'd be like, "No, we're not doing that." But that's kind of going back to the relationship we have of, you know, making sure that, you know, I have your best interest in mind and you in mind as well. There's a lot of trust that goes into that of, "Hey, I'm hoping you don't, you know, come at the end and screw me," and then
That's what Braden and I are doing.
yeah,
to
I
you.
know. Yeah.
We're not planning on screwing to you, but screwing you. But we asked you to attend meetings and everything else, and we're gonna have to make sure that building happens.
There you go.
The big thing with development, right, is it's a big risk for everyone. It's a bit for everyone, it seems, but the architect, because it's a big risk for everyone because everyone's spending a massive amount of time. And nobody knows if it really is going to happen. Nobody knows until the loan is fully approved, the equity is fully funded. You know, you've got a complete set of permits. You've got a complete set of drawings, which is, I mean, it's all insanely expensive and time consuming. So like you're saying, you got to focus on the relationship. And I think that's kind of the theme is, you know, you've got to be interviewing people. You've got to be spending time with people and checking it out. You know, because you can't just go, I don't know, it seems like there's some massive pitfalls. You know, somebody could just be underbidding the crap out of this thing. You know, hey, this is going to be 20% under, even though they know once they get the project, it's going to, you know, they're going to change order the crap out of it. You know, maybe that's it. Or,
for sure,
you know, there's got to be some other major.
That leads us into the next question I had. First of all, we're new at development. You're new at development. I'm new at development. We're figuring this out. But what somebody told me before I got into it, and I'll tell everybody listening, is it's going to take longer than you think, and it's going to cost more than you think. And those have both come true for the project that we're doing. Now, I think the project's still going to be great and it's still going to go, but keep that in mind. But as Braden was alluding to, what are, from a GC standpoint, some of the risks or pitfalls that owners can run into?
Are you talking about pre-construction or during construction?
Either.
Yeah. You know, pre-construction, obviously, the worst thing that could happen is you could get to the end and the project doesn't happen, right? You pay a ton of money, you put all this time in, you put all this energy and resources, and then the project's out of budget for whatever reason.
Well, that almost happened with the one that we're working on, because I was under an impression that lenders were going to do a certain loan, LTV, interest rate, and was really assured of that almost, given even a term sheet from lenders. And then when it came down to it, they backed out, and I couldn't get anywhere near the LTV that I wanted, and it almost killed the project right there. So that's a good example of real life, and we were in quite a bit of money. So what's next? Yeah,
I mean, you know, during construction, there's, as you guys know, tons of things that can, you know, come up. But, you know, one of them is things not included in the bid, like, hey, I didn't have this included, you know, or things not being installed properly, or things not being installed per prints, or materials that are not what was called for in the prints. Those are all really, really things that can cost tons of money.
What about
in time? Not
being
CO.
properly insured or bonded, and then you start losing money and you just bail.
Yeah, for sure.
As a GC, and then you're left trying to hire somebody else to come in.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that happen sometimes, but yeah, it's a
Our
bad
material
deal.
escalation's a problem, because I've been hearing for the last 5-6 years, materials are always going up.
Yeah, and you know, on the big project we're working on right now, you know, we got a contract from the owner probably 1st of January, and you know, it's kind of been going back and forth with the city. We're finally able to send out contracts to the subcontractors right now, and the project's starting right now. And unfortunately, since that time, materials have gone up. And I hate having to go back to an owner and tell them. That's one of my least favorite things in the world to do, is say, hey, we're gonna have to increase it by this much. And
that's my least favorite thing in the world too. By the way.
I know, everybody's least favorite. Yeah. Nobody has a good day on those days. But you know,
make it hard for you to try to give someone a budget and try to anticipate what the escalation is going to be. Then because that can make your bid
for sure
not as competitive as someone who doesn't do that.
Well, yeah, if you're just doing strictly a hard bid, that's it is definitely risky for everybody.
That's hard, yeah.
You're having to get hard numbers from subs and say, hey, this is pending any kind of increase in materials. We're hoping that the material increases have kind of leveled out a little bit, but it's just tough to tell. And hopefully it goes down. And I talked to my steel guy, and he's like, well, you could try to hold off on that project for 6 months and see if it's going to come down. I'm like, no, you can't.
It's a tough game to play.
Yeah. Because what if it goes up, or what if it gets harder to get? It just
right.
Yeah, it's a crazy game, and materials are an issue, but I think the bigger issue is more of making sure you trust the GC, making sure that GC is someone who you want to work with, and who of people who have worked with them, and that that they're going to do a good job. And at the end of the day, they're just going to be honest, and they're going to take care of what they say they're going to take care of, and they're going to do a good job.
No, that's big. I'd say for a GC, if I'm picking one, I want someone that's going to see it as a partnership.
Yeah. And
so they're going to forego maximizing profit on that one job for future jobs that they're going to get with me.
For sure.
Not that they have to take a loss on it, but that helps at least us negotiate a fair way to resolve some of those issues.
Yeah. And further to that, when change orders come, are they going to kill you on change orders? Because that's a lot of time where they're going to kill you, because they are already under contract.
Yeah.
They can charge you whatever they want on that change order. So do you think about yourself before you sign up with that GC. Do you trust that person when that first change order comes?
And you say they can charge you whatever they want. If I'm negotiating my own contract with a GC, I'm trying to put some formula in there.
Absolutely.
That controls and says, hey, if we disagree, it has to be verified by a third party or something.
Yeah. And that should be negotiated up front in a contract saying, hey, you can only charge 10% overhead on a change order.
Yeah.
And that has to be in place, because if it's not, there's a lot of dishonest GCs that will charge you as much as they want. So, yeah.
Yes. So at what point do you need to have a GC identified and, get that contract started? At what point do you need to stop interviewing and really?
Yeah, I think as early as possible in the design process, because for the issues we talked about, the earlier you have them, the more issues that they can help identify through the process that can kind of help identify potential and current issues that are there with the design.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, you've helped us a lot in developing our budget and making sure we don't get out of hand and keep us all under control. Yeah, I agree.
So as we kind of wrap up, Ascend Construction, what is it that you focus on, just for the people that are watching?
Yeah.
Are you doing, $3 million, $10 million, $500,000?
Yeah. So we're really focusing on, we're trying to raise our minimum project. We're trying to be in the $200,000 to about $5 million projects. That's where we're really good, and that's where we want to kind of stay for the time being. And
so is that a lot of retail, office building?
Yeah, there's
industrial.
A lot of retail. We the past year we've done a couple of restaurants more than maybe we'd want. We've done a little bit of marijuana, and that's.
Are you talking ground up or just tenant improvement, construction remodel?
Yeah, we're doing ground up and tenant improvement. We would like to do more, kind of lean more towards the side of ground up, because we love these developments. We love working with the architect and the owner from the beginning and helping them design, and that's what we love at, and that's what we think we're good at. So that's where we want to be. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, make sure to check us out, like and subscribe. If you want to get a hold of Tyler, shoot us an email. We'll put you in touch with them. Tyler, do you have a website or people?
Yeah. It's ascendok.com, and email is tyler@ascendok.com.
Man, all right. So thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. I would suggest you definitely get in touch with the GC as soon as possible, based on my previous experience. Then just little stuff like those, stupid little remodels or just little jobs. It's such a relationship thing in the bigger stuff. If you can maintain one relationship, and if you can get out there making those relationships and give them smaller jobs, you'll probably trust them a lot more when it comes to the bigger jobs. Sure. Anyway, thanks for watching. Awesome. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks.
We'll see you again.